A very good morning. Welcome to 91.3 Capital FM. It's the Capital Gang, your ultimate weekend social political talk show. My name is Simon Kasiate, standing in, or sitting in for that matter, for the regular host, Oscar Semueya Musoke, who, gentlemen, I'll start with you, Ofono Opondo. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Simon. Good morning to our listeners this morning. It's a very sunny morning.
Off Acacia Avenue. One of the best roads in Kampala.
You say Simon speaks for KCC, which is very
okay.
So you don't even know what is on the roads. I hope we shall discuss the potholes.
That program is not allowed on the way. That discussion is allowed on the program today, if I'm the host. That said, Ofono is very smart today in a Mercedes-Benz baseball cape, black in color, and he's got a gray polo t-shirt, and he's pouring himself a cup of coffee served by Starkaville. Good morning and welcome to the program, Honorable Ssemujju. It's been a while. I haven't seen you here in quite a bit.
But I was here last week.
When I was here, I didn't see you, sir.
Yeah, so I was here last week, even the other week, by the way. Good morning, Simon, and to listeners.
How is it for you? How is Chira, the municipality you represent in Parliament?
It's pothole, fairly competing with Kampala.
I think we're in a different league from you guys. You are in the Premiership. Well, welcome to the program.
So
Thank you.
Roro Wakiso is competing with the city.
Chira is a municipality. It's actually a city. Well, that said, Honorable Lydia Wanyoto also just joining us. Welcome to the program and good morning.
Good morning, Simon, and to the listeners. Good morning, Honorable Ssemujju. It has been a while. And Big Brother, good morning to our listeners and the viewers as well. Thank you.
Right, like I started off the program, sharing with us how the week began, the Labor Day celebrations and the dark hand of fate, should we say, terrible dark humor, where you have a Labor minister killed by a bodyguard. What do you make of such an event? I'll start with you, Honorable Ssemujju.
Unfortunate. I think the motive is what police is now investigating. What could have motivated this particular military man to shoot his boss, his principal. And since then, a lot of theories have been given, including mistreatment, including the welfare. At the very beginning, I think the Honorable Minister for Gender, Betty Amongi, said this particular bodyguard had been with the minister for only 3 weeks. It's possible, but I'm not sure that in 3 weeks you will be too angry, because at the beginning they said he had not been paid his allowances. Later on, I think the permanent secretary, Minister of Gender, clarified that all of them hadn't been paid, and they were going to pay them. But it's not possible that it's allowance and within 3 weeks for you want to be paid. The military, I saw the spokesperson saying that by 27 they had paid everybody. For me, the issue in all this, the people who deployed the person to go and be part of, in fact, a bodyguard to a minister, when that particular person had been rejected by another VIP. The monitor reported Captain Mike Mukula, but also reported another general who rejected him, whose name they were not disclosing. I think there must have been some sort of laxity among those who are deploying these officers. But I had earlier spoken, later the same information came out. I don't have the latest information, but from my earlier interaction with defense as a journalist, they used to have a rehabilitation called the Reception Center in Engola for military officers, men and women who are returning from combat. Before redeployed to their either former units or to new units, they were usually in Nakasongola. They used to call it a reception, but my understanding, maybe it was a rehabilitation. Later on, it emerged that actually this particular soldier had been in Somalia. This is what I heard and read in the newspapers. The Americans had a similar facility, mainly in Germany, but also within America. People who are returning from Iraq, before you are redeployed, they will need to do a lot of counseling. Because war, although soldiers execute war, but war is not it's not drama. People run mad. People get traumatized. So they need to be rehabilitated. So in the case of this particular person, I don't know whether he had been rehabilitated, but two, I actually don't know whether Corporal Opondo can help us, whether that reception center in Nakasongola still exists, where soldiers are booked in after, or it can exist elsewhere, and whether sufficient time is given. So if you have been at war, and then I read a very depressing story in Monta yesterday, of the troubles his family is going through. He had dropped out of school because of school fees. The family is very poor. He was the one taking care of them. Now, he said two of his wives went away. I don't know. In many organizations, by the way, they don't have those sort of... I remember when we were starting Observer, one time Kevin Arilo, the late, called him. He said, you don't look like you are okay. Is there any problem troubling you? Why don't you share it with us? Europeans have these things in organizations, in schools. They will look at a child, and that child is not then someone should be able to speak to that person. I am not sure, again, Corporal Fono can be of help here, if in the military they have counselors, people who can deal with social problems, because it appears to me what was troubling this particular bodyguard was too much. He needs money. At home, they need money. I mean, the story of the sister in the monitor, that he was even calling a sister back in the village to send 20,000 to eat, to survive. And then this is a guy in whose hands is your life, carrying a gun. So these are the issues that are troubling. But also broadly, I had earlier spoken and told these senior UPDF officers that the life that you live, you the senior, each one of you is riding in a vehicle of about 500 to 600 million shilling. You sleep fairly well. And I remember telling Parliament, because I sometimes I use the Mbuya Moobs road, and you see the vehicles that are carrying the bosses
going to the headquarters.
Yet the junior officers don't even have anywhere to sleep. They are sleeping like wild animals. And I said, you see, one time you will have issues. I'm not attributing this to that, but my plea is that at least the lives these armed people live should not be miles apart, too much, that for you it's like you are in heaven and them are in hell, and then they carry guns to protect you. Yes. So the welfare of the ordinary soldier, because someone like him, you earn 400,000 something a month, you can't pay rent, your family cannot survive, you carry a gun. So there are many things that are troubling them. The economy may not have sufficient money to deal with them, but at least build them houses so they sleep decently. You can't sleep them like wild animals, and then the following day they are jumping on the pickups to go giving you protection. So in all this, I'm not attributing the action of this particular man to any of the issues I have said, but we can use the opportunity of his conduct to deal with these social issues that we've lived with, of senior officers living in heaven, and then their bodyguards are living in hell. And then they expect the bodyguards to be happy, serving these angels living in heaven, riding in the latest Land Cruiser. So the discussion, what the death of the minister should trigger a discussion within the security. Because, I mean, you take a lot of money. Every year now we spend 5 trillion shilling on defense, 3 trillion shilling on classified. And I am not sure in the world today, apart from information, there are any classified equipment. The Americans are supplying Ukraine equipment, but they first do a list. We are taking this, and that's what I kept asking in defense. That for you, classified equipment is what? Maybe information equipment. But guns are being supplied like motor vehicles. They say now Europeans are going to give Ukraine this sort of equipment. Now Americans are sending this. In Uganda, we still hide and use that as a shield for money. 3 trillion shilling. Have 1 trillion every year for the next 5 years, building decent houses for your soldiers. And you stop sleeping them like goats in a village. Even goats in Kampala are not sleeping like soldiers.
Wow. Honorable Ssemujju, you have really nailed your point across very succinctly and in your usual brutal honesty. Now, Ofonopondo, I think Honorable Ssemujju raises an issue of welfare, but within welfare, others may also argue the issue of mental health. And you see what he's talked about, that someone has come out of war and has not had any form of rehabilitation, and they are given another task which may be a bit difficult. I also get a correction for you, Honorable Ssemujju. The Chieftaincy of Military Rehabilitation Center is in Mubende and not Nakasongola. So it exists, but we do not know how.
No, the one that Mubende was a casualty. People who have been, the one in Nakasongola was a reception to return them, see their mentor, and then deploy.
So now you, Richard, who sends through a point of information which is wrong, please wait for Over to your point.
But all can help. I know he's a corporal.
Why have you given OA rank?
Well, even a corporal is a good rank, by the way. Because it means...
No, you were a recruit, now I am demoting you.
Anyway, first of all, I commiserate like many Ugandans have done so to the family of the late Colonel Charles Engola Majordogo, the former minister of Gender, Minister of State. But let us first of all broaden. Ssemujju, your arguments may be relatively valid, relevant, but not entirely, because let us look at the country and specifically how the security forces and in particular UPDF has been provided for. Your argument seems to rationalize that because soldiers are poorly paid, they should get away with the crime. No, this argument was made before by Amin, who said, since you are not being paid, you can rob other people. In Obote too, a similar argument was made. That's why in Obote too, soldiers, you are young. This Bokoto Street was actually the officers' mess, the officers' quarters, second lieutenants, captains, and majors. This was their area. And if you talk to the older people who were living here, those soldiers would go as far as the medical school, Galloway, to pick young medical doctors, medical students, to have them as their mistresses. They would walk down Kamocha Market and Akawa Market. They ask you to cut 5 kilograms of meat, a coke, 2 bunches of matoke, and they would tell you, Nipigia sent sana. You thank me for taking your things. And when you ask for the money, they say, we are poorly paid, we are guarding you. I don't think we should use that. That because a soldier is poorly paid, a guard is poorly paid. They are not the only ones who are poorly paid. I don't know how much you pay your own domestic servant. Would you say your domestic servant, or many domestic servants who are paid less, they sleep in danger places, should poison the family food because they are poorly paid? I think we need to deal with the issues of ethics. In the military, the training inculcates ethics of obedience to the rules of the military, whether you are being paid or not. And in the case of the UPDF, there are avenues for raising grievances. We have weekly meetings, we have monthly meetings, supervised by the political commissars. Every small unit of the army and the police has somebody called a commissar. That commissar is the one who listens through command, through intelligence, listens to the different issues. And in a formal meeting, they try to iron out. If there are issues of welfare, if there are issues of employment terms and conditions, if there are issues of personal conflicts and so on, they are handled. And that's why even when UPDF generally is not well paid, you don't have many cases of internal indiscipline. So the avenue for counseling is available. It may not be sufficient, but they are available. Secondly, in the instant case where you say somebody comes from the war, again, when people come from war, they're interned. Could be Mwende if you are a casualty, could be Nakasongola, could be every division has some center where people are interned when you come from the field and you're taken through debriefing. It may not be exhaustive, dealing with the specific cases of mental breakdown and so on and so forth, but it exists. In the specific case of Somalia, we have the single peace and operation center. Prior to going to Somalia or external deployment, both officers and men are taken there for roughly 3-4 months for training, for culturalization, because if you are going to Somalia, you need to train people how to behave in Somalia, in a predominantly Muslim country, and so on and so forth. And also when they return, nobody returns from Somalia and goes home straight. They go to Singo. Again, another 1 month or so, because of resources, because of pressure. Again, that debriefing may not be exhaustive. I think what is emerging is that certainly we need to pay a lot of attention to mental health issues in many sectors. Look at schools today. We are discussing these issues of homosexuality in schools. If you look at it, most likely it's arising from failures in the families. Parents don't give sufficient time to their children. They think it is the school which will model the children. The schools are under pressure. They don't model the children. Then you say homosexuality. Look at most of the cases that have been identified. They are usually not children from the ordinary families. They are children from we who have some means, but claim we don't have time for our children. That's where you find those social issues. So I think we need to do that. Now, about whether or not the welfare of soldiers. First of all, soldiers get their salaries from the Ministry of Defense. And then, in addition to those, they get dry ration. Third, where they are deployed to guard an officer, like for me, I am guarded, both at home and where I am. It is expected that the Uganda Media Center will give the soldier or the police officer additional allowances. Usually that is also known, because the deployment, the police will tell you that our officers, we pay them so much. If they are deployed in Parliament, which is better resourced, they perhaps will be given, but usually they know. Now, the issue could come maybe where there is abuse. Abuse in the sense that many of these guards are not on the payroll of the entities to where they are guarding the police post. And therefore, sometimes some of the ministries may find it difficult to directly pay the officer. So what they do, they can choose to pay my personal assistant, for example. They say the personal assistant will receive the monthly allowances and then transmit to the guards. Or my personal secretary will receive the allowances and pay. Now, if you're a boss who is not following through, there could be abuse in that direction.
Money can get lost between your personal assistant.
Yes, and in the particular case of a soldier, usually they will have, like in this case, maybe an ADC who is a person of a higher rank, but also that one can be, because these people interact with the officers which give the money, so they actually get to know how much they're entitled to, they get to know how many days they're entitled to, and so on and so forth. In the particular case, like Honorable Ssemujju said, this officer had just stayed for 3 weeks. It is unlikely, therefore, even if it's unlikely that he could have had issues of allowances with the boss. So I suspect there could have been an administrative issue with the immediate supervisor, who is the ADC. But all those will emerge, will come out from the investigation. Now, of course, depending on who you are, Honorable Ssemujju and I, sometimes you may strictly take and say, this is a guard. Just keep to what your entitlement is. Other people go an extra mile and do more than. In fact, there are people who have stayed with the guards. The guards are like their siblings, part of the family. And the guards don't want to leave because you are treating them very well. We cannot tell everybody to do that, but where their official entitlement, it should be followed through, and the person receives their full due. And usually it is explained. That's why even when we have thousands of guards, how come we have never had a case like this? You remember the other day we had, I don't know where this media report was accurate, which talked about a former Supreme Court judge whose police guards at home locked the gate and said he can't leave because the allegation was that the judiciary transmits the money through the judge.
A lady judge.
No, even a male judge. And the judge would say, but you sleep in my house. So you eat food. You eat food.
Charges them.
You use my toilet. You use my toilet.
And what?
So I deducted. We used to have another senior person. Yes, we used to have another senior person who I worked under. And the soldiers at that time were getting, I think, 55,000 shillings per diem. If they traveled out. Now, if you traveled with the soldiers for 4 days to Apache, for example, he would reach there and then he say, because the money would come with his package, where his ADC. Then we say, no, in Apache, the small hotels are 5,000. A room is 5,000. So instead of giving the entire 55,000, he says, no, the rooms here are cheaper, I'm giving you 20,000, so keeps. And we would have many instances where he would be abandoned by the driver and the escorts. Then they just board the bus, they come back. Then the local police would find how to bring him back to Kampala. So there are cases of abuse. There are cases of abuse. I don't want to pinpoint.
Why can such a guy's name be mentioned?
No. When we go to meetings, for example, when we go to meetings, you go to State House or wherever you go, you see the soldiers, the guards and the drivers usually park and stay where their vehicles are. Just move slowly, quietly, and listen, eavesdrop to their conversation.
My goodness.
So in government, there needs to be a system. But because we have not had a hiccup, I think, generally speaking, we have paid a deaf ear to the genuine, legitimate complaint of the drivers, of guards, sometimes even of lower office workers, a messenger, a secretary, a sexual harassment and things like that and so on. So we need, this is one of the things that we hope should trigger internal reforms in how we did. Then I agree with Honorable Ssemujju, the deployment. From my experience now of 22 years being guarded by different people, police, the military, different section of the military, could be military intelligence, military police and so on.
Or followed?
Yes. No. Guarded. Guarded. It has become a big business, by the way. The guard battalion, both of the police and the army.
Oh.
Because to be sent to guard parliament, to be deployed to guard parliament, where parliament, I'm told they pay additional about 1 million.
Allowance
1.5
in the ring
per month
of the boss.
Yes. You can imagine what policemen go through. They pay their bosses to be deployed to guard parliament, to guard the Bank of Uganda, KCCA, and so on and so forth. So that's why you find that an indisciplinado, even where his case is known, her case is known, if a phone rejects him, he goes back, he talks well with the boss will send him to Ssemujju. So you will find it rotating. Now, because many people don't have this background, the military security background, as soon as they put for you a guard, You take because you don't bother yourself to say, can I understand the background of this guard I am having? Some of us who have that background, I will go through. And if I just by asking you where your last 3 assignments were, I can talk to the boss people who brought you and say, no, please, we did with this person. I may not give the reason, but I will say, we did with this person, change, and so on and so forth. So there's a laxity, so to speak, and fiddling. People are deployed even when they know that they don't do the right things, because there is payment of money. There's payment of money. I hope my colleagues in the security services are listening. This is rampant, particularly the police. It's too bad in the police. In the police, they will even send you somebody who is disabled, limping, to be a guard. And you say, this person who is limping, disabled, should be doing desk work. Now you have sent him to me. You have sent, not an operation, you have sent him to me. Supposing we reach a stage, we find ourselves in a situation where we have to run. How will this person run?
You protect him.
You carry him.
So then, of course, there's a tailored. Do we have tailored training for personal guards? We do have, but again, I think it's not well implemented. They pick people on the basis of that compromise. The process is compromised.
Call it outright corruption.
Yeah. So we find and so there's need for rectification, really, in the way these things are handled.
Lydia, having listened to these 2 gentlemen and from your own experience,
So, Simon, you remember the point I made earlier. So they bring 50 billion to Nalweiso's office here at Okero House. A major who is part of the security connives with the lower ranks. He says these guys are just feasting on money. Remember the story, 2016 election, when they walked away with 35 billion shilling. So they see you guys, the life that you live.
Yeah, of course, yes, you make a deal.
Cases where bodyguards have run away with their principals' money, which they see in the cars.
Yes, remember the case of Honorable Ogwang.
I know one who lifted the money and went. After 2 days, he brought himself and reported to Majid and said, I had personal problems. I stole my boss's money. I have solved my problems. Now I am here. Put me in.
Yes, when we're having Ziggy, the locust. I was coming for I was coming for this show. So I usually pass by my bank, Housing Finance and Kololo, and I found 3 soldiers lifting a sack from a minister's official car
into the bank.
Now, if you had taken that into the house and you don't supervise well, it's possible they can.
These stories are
the minister had a sack of
even you who's listening to us, I'm sure you have a story that you know. Lydia, over to you. Listen, these 2 gentlemen, is the case of lack of proper welfare or the failure to appreciate these people for who they are and treating them just as humanly as we would?
Unfortunately, we are discussing when we had a death happening after Labor Day. You know, there are also those contradictions because it's about work welfare. Then you see we have death, and the minister responsible was the one of Labor. Sabit himself was on Labor Day. He had been deployed to do escort duties for the minister. They were in Namutumba. But let me start by saying that I pay my condolences to the family of retired Colonel Charles Engola, who is also a member of parliament, who was a member of parliament for Yam North, to his family, to his constituents, to Parliament, to the Ssemujju and Katesh and your colleagues, and to the government of Uganda, where he also served as a minister, but to the UPDF family, because for them, once UPDF, you remain a UPDF. Maybe that explains why he had the UPDF escorts and not police like other executive leaders, because others have police, others have the UPDF, but they are all doing escort services. I wanted to say this. Yes, I think that I worked in Parliament of Uganda in the office of the Government Chief Whip, but of course, even earlier, I used to work under the office of the Speaker when I left university. The issue of support staff has always been, maybe now you can even hear that they have improved on their support. In the past, you would find that, the Ssemujju, the time you're in Parliament, you have a minimum of over 100 people with your support teams, either drivers or bodyguards, seated somewhere having conversations. Let's call them 200. And those conversations, you remember they used to sit where you are now constructing the new chambers. We used to find them there. Now they are. But at some point, those conversations it was going to be counterproductive or lethal to the bosses, and I can tell you why. Some of them connived to contest against members, and some MPs lost their seats to their drivers and bodyguards because of those conversations and their drivers. That's one. Number two, it has helped Parliament, the Parliamentary Commission, to actually, after those problems of drivers and their bosses and contesting against them, you send somebody to go for burial, to go and look after your wife, to take her. Some of them are even going out with their spouses. Yeah, you send her this with money, for you are busy. So the wife found the driver or the escort more, especially soldiers, more valuable.
Katesh, take note.
I know.
On the program, you sent your driver to take your wife.
I know escorts. I know escorts who are more close to children of these principals and their spouses, and it has caused marital problems. It's not a life joke because they are available, they are energetic. They are emotionally attached to the children. They take them to school, they bring them back, they take the wife to the market and say this is good, carry the bags, and your wife, your family is taken away by support. Then you begin having conflict or issues. Yet he's also armed. They call him Afande in the house, Afande, Uncle Afande here, Uncle Afande there. Wow. So these are things that people I have seen. Now, while I worked at Parliament, I remember the Parliamentary Commission, that time I think it was under Right Honourable Kadaga, they took up this matter seriously. First of all, some of the complaints were that there was no holding room. While Fono has talked about a reception area in a single, for example, but even the basics that when you are inside the chambers or in a committee room or in your office, how do you expect your driver or support escort people to sit in the vehicle the whole day? So what Parliament did was provide room, even maybe like an internet center where they can sit, or a shade. That was the proposal, so that they can have where they can sit. But I can give you an example of what happened at national functions. Even if you talk about Namutumba, Namutumba trained the whole day. Now you've gone with the driver. He has an umbrella which they have led you to the shade. For them, if they cannot fit in the vehicle, they have to strategically know where you are, so they can keep alert on you. So they either get wet if it is raining, or they get heat up when it is very hot, because there are no shades provided for them at national venues. They are just there, and that makes them. Let me finish.
Information. When we were in Chankwanzi 203 for the movement, I was a journalist. Started raining. We went to the kitchen. Then the wind blew away the tents for the big people. They found us there because we was vice president, Letwa Pakaburo. They found us in the kitchen. They couldn't chase us because we were the rightful occupiers.
You were there. So I want somebody to prove me wrong. If in the planning process, let me give Namutumba, because that was Labor Day, whether there was a provision, a shade area, whether at the checkpoint, because there are debates saying that if you are a security person or driver, you should be alert. But there should be a strategic shade area where they can watch over their bosses, but they also have some level of safety, of refreshment. Some of them, if they are not shrewd, like the ones maybe OO is able to vet, they should be able to have their refreshments while they watch over. because in the morning they should have meals before they come. But if you are going to have your support teams go on your village and begin booking tea at a restaurant and their dates there, there's a problem. There's a problem, and we should not. I've told you what happened at Parliament. At Parliament, there were even those conversations when they are waiting are dangerous, because those conversations can be lethal. They either plot to take over your political seat, and some of them have won against their drivers, or they plot to take over your wives. Now your wife says she gets the money from the boss, and then gives you some. Because you are more closer to him, and you also have Ukanyama, I mean, you're a soldier, so you provide her other needs. So I'm trying to be, but that's not the reason why we're having a current situation. We're just giving, it's like has said, it's an eye opener. Absolutely. The reality is, let's provide for support teams to the basics, not to even spoil them, because I've now seen people giving a restaurant. I got so many calls. I saw so many calls seated in Sheraton eating. There are people are calling me, has your driver and support had lunch or dinner? Have you given them, called them and see whether they have taken any juice? That's not the issue. The issue is really basics. Yeah, are they the basic things? Have they had their meals? Have they had their are they having a shade? And the Parliament, I think, it has let now a good example, because we also get a lot of pressure, people asking us to be deployed at Parliament, but also the campaign about who your drivers are, because some of you are given, I think, the government does not officially pay for an official driver like the vehicle. It is up to you to manage the resources you have for your support team. But there are much better voices now, because those people at any one time, there are about like 300 of them, and you are inside the chambers. They had formed associations, they had formed circles, and they campaign on who is good. I remember a minister who used to have, would also eat allowances, like I said, of guards and whatever. But now their colleagues will now share, they compare notes. And the moment they know that you are being so it can be a problem. And had talked about ethical issues. We must have ethical issues, but standards are important. If we do not have a country that has standards, we are going to have a problem. And it's very, very important for us to be sensitive to issues of standards. If I know that I work with OO, and OO pays his driver 1 million shillings or an allowances, I must. They have their own caucuses, so we must be very careful the way we treat. Let me conclude by issues of the psychological trauma and whatever. It is true, it happens. For UPDF, I think they do 3 to 4 months when they come back, like OO has said. But that thing does not go away. It keeps recurring. So I think they should periodically do those treatment. But that even civilians who have not gone to the war fronts, I was at the war front for many years in Somalia. I've been doing work for AU conflict, even for civilians. Those problems happen. But we have not built professionalism or culture of psychologically treating people, because I think Ugandans, there are people who actually live permanently in those poverty situations, because the problem is about basic needs. I mean, if you've taken a first wife and she goes away, you take a second one, she goes away, you have children, you cannot stabilize in work.
First husband.
And if you don't stabilize in your workplace, your mind is not settled. We've not paid attention to whether people can be stable in a job, because of the way the structure of our country is and the culture. So that's
Thank you very much for that. In fact, I've just received an inbox message from a bodyguard, a former bodyguard, a former minister who happened to be my friend. And he says, thanks, Capital Gang, for talking about this issue. Then he says, my people are too happy with you. When he says my people, means his fellow bodyguards.
For me, my experience was at Parliament.
And I've seen
because there are so many in one place.
A message about Parliament and how they bribe to get onto guard duties. And he gave one particular example. He said to become a guard of a certain MP, this guy had to borrow take a loan of 3 million. And 2 months down the road, his principal was demoted, and so he went with him. So the guy is distraught. But anyway, Katesh.
Yes.
whenever we are passing around the precincts of Parliament, away from the fact that your bodyguards and guard cars are parked on islands and spoiling what's left of our good roads in the city, their welfare continues to bother us. And now with this unfortunate incident, the gangsters are thinking that we need to point a floodlight into the welfare of not just our bodyguards, but generally our support staff, from maids at home to drivers to errand boys and everything in between. And as a legislator, I think, well, they don't have a voice in there per se, but you're all their voices. What's your take, briefly, before we go to another topic?
Well, of course, before I answer that, is a friend of mine who told me a story about what happened in Kenya when he was driving. He used to drive a minister. The minister used to mistreat the driver so badly. So one day they were driving in the evening going home, and there was an announcement in the breaking news
Minister is dropped.
that the minister, there is a cabinet reshuffle and the minister has been dropped. So it was around apparently 10 p.m. So the driver parked and said, "I'm sorry, sir, you are no longer a minister, have your key." And he walked out. It's a true story.
I thought you would have said, "Get out of the car."
No, he gave him the key and left. I think it's all about how we treat human beings and having humility. Because, and I don't want to reach a conclusion because we are still speculating. It's unfortunate we lost a minister. My condolences to the family. At this point, we are not sure about the motivation behind what happened. Okay, but it's condemnable. On Friday, on Thursday, Simon, you know that you were presiding over the launch of the book by retired Chief Justice.
Yes.
And one of the stories he mentioned is when he, on a Christmas day, I think Eve, when soldiers were celebrating way back in the 80s, next door, and a private started shooting rapidly on his house and smashed all his windows. And for me, that story, if you contrast it with what happened, I had on the TV, on earlier on, we cannot condone indiscipline. Indiscipline by forces must be dealt with, whether there are other issues that we need to discuss. But when you put on a uniform and you hold a gun, then you become responsible. And then that one must be emphasized. However, like you mentioned, now the discussion is going beyond, okay, could there be social, psychological welfare issues that need to be addressed? And I agree with you. Number one, I think the people who are guarding, are they trained to guard? Okay? Because these days we have so many people who are guarded in this country, which sometimes I think is unnecessary. You find investors are guarded, even MPs are guarded, some people are guarded, me, I'm not guarded. Others are guarded with so many guards. And is it stretching? Is it stretching the available trained professional guarding services that it gets us to now encroach on regular people to offer guarding services that are not necessarily trained about it? Because that's very, very key. If you pick a soldier who has returned from Somalia, 4 months down the line, you give him to guard him. Is he actually trained to guard? Has he psychologically been prepared? And that's a discussion we should have. Number two, welfare. I agree. I think there is a bit of inconsistency from when you talk to the people. Treatment of drivers, guards, support services. It's much as they draw salaries from the institutions that second them. But this additional treatment is not uniform. And so, like you have mentioned, when people are comparing notes and saying, you know, for me, when I'm at Lydia's place, they treat me like this, I have dinner at the same time.
The same table.
It may not necessarily be. I'll give you an example. I just returned from the West. I traveled yesterday to attend Women's Day celebrations in Oshenyi. And I moved a couple of MPs and the Deputy Speaker. And because we left so early, we were rushing. I quickly told my people in Shema to organize a breakfast. And of course, we had guards and security, but we all had to be taken care of because you can't have someone hungry the whole journey, and then for you take care of yourself, and then you think that they are very happy. So what I'm saying is that there is no standard operating procedure. Simon might be treating his guard differently or differently, and because if they are in the same community setup, they sit together and discuss, then there is likely to be comparison of notes. My boss does this. So for me, it calls about now self-consciousness, us to be aware that we are dealing with human beings like us, and we need to respect them, respect their rights, and treat them with civility.
And just so you know, they are a very good source of information. In my heydays as an investigative journalist, those were my number one sources of information. And Ssemujju here will tell you that those guys, when you I even learned a habit just so that I can be able to get information from them. I took on serious smoking so that I am able to share a cigarette with such people.
I think, Simon, you have not changed from your Ntare days. You know, this man, I was a deputy editor in Ntare when he was a timekeeper. But rarely did he keep time.
The timekeeper not keeping time.
That's why I was keeping the time.
So,
Honorable, at this point, let me call for a break because it seems you are beginning to start telling lies about me. Now I will start talking the truth about you.
Capital Gang on 91.3 Capital FM.
Welcome back. It's 91.3 Capital FM. It is the Capital Gang. My name is Simon Kasiate, standing in for the regular host, Oscar Ssemujju. And so our conversation has been about the welfare of guards and support staff, but that became an antithesis to what should otherwise have been a greater and wider conversation on labor issues. The minimum wage, for example, working conditions, occupational safety and health, and things of that nature, to just, decode what is it that an ordinary worker in this country ought to have for them to offer their services in the best way possible. You've had conversations, some stereotypical, and in fact some coming in from our own president saying that Ugandans are lazy people, do not offer good labor, and yet we have thousands, perhaps even tens of thousands of our people every day leaving the country to go and offer labor or hard work elsewhere. And that now should draw us the wider conversation on matters of labor force. Ssemujju, I'll start with you. Do you think, even as we celebrated or commemorated Labor Day at the beginning of this week, never mind the bad climax to it, is the Ugandan laborer at a point where they can comfortably say, well, I am unionized enough to be able to demand for my rights, get a minimum wage and things of that nature?
The working conditions in formal institutions, it's a debate that's very difficult to handle in Uganda. Let me start with an example. I think the Minister for Education was told the absenteeism was largely because of children not eating. And then she said the parents should be responsible, buy their children flask so they can eat warm food. People started laughing because what she was proposing was a luxury. With the population, big percentage of the population not in formal employment, even a living wage is discussing a living wage is a luxury in itself, because the NSSF, where people in formal employment are statutorily supposed to be depositing money, On their register, they have 2 million people, but the one that keep sending money are 500,000 regularly. Government employees also, I think, another about less than 500,000. So in Uganda, people who are in formal employment with the appointment letters are just about 1 million. I represent a constituency where there are some factories. The women mainly who work there are just issued with numbers. You are number 501.
They don't even know you by name.
They don't know because they are avoiding the statutory deductions, NSSF, payee, what. So they issue them with the numbers.
And the rest.
So you will meet them in the morning queuing to enter. And because the law, I think the Workers' Compensations Act, if you want to avoid it, you also employ people that way. I've raised this matter several times, especially with the minister responsible for investment. And the last interaction, she was telling me, please, we can't put these people on pressure because they're employing our people. That's what she told me.
How they are employed doesn't bother.
Yeah, at least they are employing them. When you disturb them, they may not employ them. So the living wage and sometimes the working conditions become a luxury because it represents just a fraction of our society. But also the work ethics of those who are working. I had an interaction. I had written a minority report opposing the borrowing of money, I think, to the private sector foundation when they were with the Investment Authority working on Namambi Industrial Park. And they deployed the Honorable Gerard Sendawula to convince me. It took us even to Ginger. What he told me there was that if you don't build crescent crane, the one that is supposed to be training people in hotel and tourism, he told me he was operating a small hotel in Masaka, but workers were coming from Kenya. And he said, we have a duty as a country to train. But also the ethics of Ugandans who are working in before you speak about their conditions and welfare. You go to countries like Dubai, they want more, I say Vietnam is another country. Filipino. You will meet posters many. We want cashiers, they must be Filipino. We want this. I think, and I am told, I don't have the relevant information, that those countries, even when they are sending people away to work for small jobs, they are also trained. Ours, someone who has been a house girl here goes to Dubai to work as a cashier. No training. So we are a country that generally we've not paid the attention to training of people for the things that they are doing locally and outside. I think now we may even have 1 million who are in the Middle East. Not necessarily that all of them are maids. The others who are doing many other things. But by the time a country begins advertising that want these smaller jobs but for Philippines, then you ask yourself, what is it that those people are doing that we are not doing? Even the ones that are at workplaces, you go and meet someone in a hotel, say, okay, you've committed a crime, to go there, the way they receive you. So the training, from my conversation with the Honorable Gerard Sendawula, at that time I think he was either on the board, was that we needed a lot of training for people who are going to work first of all in the tourism sector itself. Because the tourists that give you nearly $1 billion every year, everybody working in a hotel, working in areas where they go, will need to know that these guys must be treated like kings and queens. They are the ones bringing money into our country.
You don't treat them like you're doing them a favor.
Yes.
So turning to your phone, Mondo, therefore. Yes, whereas government ought to provide, better working conditions, higher wages, and things for that nature, Ssemujju seems to raise the issue that even our own work ethic as a people, is it a cultural thing, or is it that government has failed to deliberately and intentionally lead in trying to do mindset change?
No, I think government has been having many areas to focus on, and so, generally speaking, training, particularly training for private sector business environment, hasn't been our strong point. We thought that people now look at our two major areas of the economy, agriculture. Agriculture we left for the illiterate and semi-literate. It's just now that educated people are beginning to go back. Now, if you talk of adoption of new technology, adoption of new ethics of business, can those people adopt? Look at the business. Go to Chikubo. Now you can find the graduates who initially went there because they failed to enter our public service. But the overwhelming majority are illiterate, semi-literate.
But even when you go there as a graduate, you begin to behave like
yes.
people you find.
Look at all our markets. There are weighing scales. Who uses a weighing scale in Uganda? How many people use weighing scale? If you are selling your beans, you want to have a plastic thing. If you insist that please, I want a weighing scale, they will say again the rate of tower. Go to any restaurant in town here. Every worker, including a waitress, they are having their personal phones on them. You are making an order and they are talking on phone. They are having toothpick, picking their teeth while taking your order. So those things appear small, but they add up about ethics. Look at any company. A Ugandan worker will tell the relative and friend to come and visit them at the workplace. Now, if you insist that please keep your, we have a place where we keep all the phones when you report in the morning, and you can all go and talk on your phone during the break. Workers will think you are crazy. So those are things that so we need to deal with training of skills, training in ethics, and enforcing them, so that eventually it becomes a conscious behavior for the worker. Look at you and I in the public service. Because generally it is permanent and pensionable. There was a time when it is permanent and pensionable. You come and put your coat because you know, after all, the PS cannot sack you.
Absolutely.
Why do you think our public health and public schools, the performance is very, very, very poor? The headmaster will tell you, I have no authority. I cannot even suspend. I cannot stop a salary of a teacher who I know has not come to school for the last 2 months. And so is the medical officer who's leading a health center 2, health center 3. Because, you know, previously we used to have a system where it is the headmaster who goes to the DEO and he brings the salary, the physical money, and he gives the teacher. Now the salary goes straight from Govi straight
to the account.
Actually, from Bank of Uganda, straight to the account of the teacher. So the teacher knows that the headmaster has no way of stopping their salary. So we need to deal with training of people may have skills, but do they have the right attitude? Do they have the right attitude? Katesia will say, Ofono and Parliament doesn't like Parliament. Parliament is now, we say Parliament is independent. Members of Parliament are supposed to be treated with soft gloves. How come we don't have a quorum? 529 members, but sometimes the quorum is not there in the committee. Look at the
plenary.
Look at the committee reports. They send a committee to go and investigate something, and then they come back, they write a report, and then the main house throws away the report. Says you have wasted our time. Yeah. Why are they not putting their mind into the work they are doing? And yet we say they are nominally educated. They are senior 6 and above. Majority of them actually are above that standard. But how come you don't have quality? Now, if you don't have quality in Parliament, you don't have quality in civil service, and you can't enforce discipline, conscious discipline in Parliament. So we need many areas. Skills, yes, people may have skills, but do they have the right attitude? Do you have the right ethics for the jobs we are doing? No. So we need to pay attention there. All these people who go out to work, why? Look at the complaints they make. We have left the export of labor to the private people. They give you 2 days of sensitization. Now, somebody who has been used to eating matoke and karu now goes to Middle East where people are eating rice and bread.
Chapati.
And chapati. Now, for them, they will say, Tetulia Mary. For them, you have not when you hear their complaint, they say it's about 1 million.
Because Bugatti is for it's an accompaniment.
So who has gone through the syllabus of the training of workers before they are, so when even they complain about the Indian and the Chinese investors in the Namambe in the Ssemujju village, what's the complaint? Because we have laissez-faire. The Chinese will want you to deposit your phone, but you find that our people, the ladies particularly, it is at work that they are plating their hair. Doing work, you are plating your hair, you are gossiping. You have been to these countries. When you go to a factory, people work. So we need to do many things. And particularly, maybe we need to, these vocational institutes that we're having, both private and government. Skills, yes, but ethics. We need to focus on work ethics, business ethics. Look at it.
So how does that? Just a small question here, Ofonopon. How is the work ethic built? Is it a personal consciousness as
that's what I'm
individuals,
saying.
Or government must enforce?
We need the vocational.
Beginning by enforcement,
vocational institutes, whether private or public, and so on. Go to any butchery. Just lift your eyes off the minzani, and the man will put the knee of the cow, will get the huge bone, put for you there. When you take and now our people who have been in the butchery is the Ssemujju. Now nobody wants to confront a Muslim.
That is their speciality.
A Muslim at butchery.
No, the cutting.
I think I may be.
He puts for you the huge bone.
They've taken over that sector. You can't
as
go
if
there.
they are doing you a favor. So we need
even have big
many areas. We need many areas. Look at
No, but you see, the point that Ofono is not answering. I've always given an example. I went to to a secondary school where to do anything you are beaten. There are people who have gone to Namagunga, Gayaza, where they don't beat anyone. The moment you don't have culture as a country, you remember the president speaking about Blantyre, that even children, when they are eating sugar cane, the husks are not going to be thrown, but here MPs will be throwing Mvu through their window. So that culture is built, but sometimes it begins with enforcement, a serious one. I am not sure that those schools were not beating at the beginning.
The problem is when we start enforcing, especially, for example, littering here in Kampala, all of a sudden every one of you become a human rights activist. Why are you beating us for throwing rubbish? It's just a simple thing. Why don't you just get employee cleaners? But Katesh, you are an employer and also, interestingly, in the tourism industry, which for the most part is bedeviled by the absence of good cultured work ethic. And yet, as a people, everyone says Ugandans are nice people. We are kind, nice, and everything. When it comes to doing
if you
work,
don't enforce something, you're a good man. if you don't enforce them, like now, Mr. Museveni is a very good man for people of Kampala because he has allowed border people to do what they want. He has allowed the taxi people. Yeah, he's a good man.
Literally everything. This government has no enforcement.
Is regarded as a bad man because he enforces and gets things done. Katesh.
Simon, for me, this I would want to attribute, these challenges you are raising to two issues. Number one, our education system here that we adopted produces people out of universities with degrees, and it raises expectations that I have graduated with a degree and I need to be somewhere in an office, put on a tie and work. That's the mentality general across the board. Whether he's in a financial institution earning below 500,000, it's a different story. But you get skilled services that are needed. For example, I'll tell you that getting a barista, a professional barista here in this country.
What's a barista?
A barista is someone who makes coffee.
You're taking off Star Cafe.
We are speaking to
Not a barista.
No. A barista is someone who can, produce coffee, a fresh coffee, serve it. It's not everyone can do. Not this coffee of yours of mixing. The real coffee which is brewed. Getting a professional barista here in Uganda is a problem. And the baristas At least
those who brew professional coffee, professionally.
Yes, they will be earning over $1 million, sometimes $2 million. A good barista, but someone will think that
every win a month, every brew.
But someone, a typical Ugandan, will think that these people who are doing these technical jobs, they are there because they unfortunately did not do well and did not get a degree. That's the mindset among our people. So you sometimes you are looking for people, professional people to work at the farm, to do mechanics, to do plumbing, to do even cocktails, professional. You can't get
the mixologists.
Okay, mixologists.
and some, that's my specialty.
Yeah. And someone
as a consumer.
Yes.
So a typical Ugandan, even who is employed in a hotel, many Ugandans who are employed in hotels to do those services, tend to think that it is so unfortunate that I am here. So
they are there.
So you will be working in a hotel and someone approaches you, says, "Now, Honorable, I'm here. Can I find a job in immigration where?" Then you say, "But how much are you earning here?" I'm earning about 1.2. Then you are like, "What do you want? Can't you build on this?" So that's the first problem. Our training mindset
or vocational training.
Yes, that's number one. Number two, if you study the history of excellent service delivery, services are improved from manufacturing. So if you go to economies like Japan, South Korea, developed economies, because they have experienced the Industrial Revolution, the machine teaches man to be efficient in service. It's not the other way around. That's why when you go to some of our places up country, you go to a restaurant, you sit, someone will take 20 minutes to come to you. But when you go to a KFC or a restaurant in China,
you barely have touched it.
And when you start now scrolling through the menu, wasting time, you'll say next person. You are wasting time. So
you should walk into KFC when you know what you are going to.
So developed countries, because the countries which have experienced industrial revolution, if you meet a typical Ugandan who has worked in a factory on a machine and he transits into a service, he will be a much better person on service delivery.
The one has been manual.
Yes. So those are the two.
So we need to send it there for trading.
So now come back to our local situation here. You talked about the tourism industry. I'm in the tourism industry, and I can tell you one of the biggest problems is attributed to my first point I raised. In Kenya, there's a school called
Utali College.
Everyone talks about it.
People start aspiring from primary school that I will go to Utali
and be a chef.
And be a chef.
And be a waiter.
He comes out, he loves, he's passionate about it. Here, someone thinks being a chef, I'm so unfortunate, I didn't get a degree. And so you'll find that many hoteliers here in the industry end up getting chefs, managers from Kenya, simply because of our attitude.
Even me with a small bakery called Akaduka,
yes,
I had to bring a pastries chef from Kenya.
So the issue, then the other aspect is
because the hours, the moment he starts mixing, they tell you one day, they always have a problem.
One time I had a manager whom I had employed,
and they don't stop going for barrio.
And I fired him because he left guests and went to watch Arsenal match. I cannot. It's unbelievable. So sometimes I think when we are discussing issues of unemployment, we scatter around welfare things, but we forget about the number one problem is attitude and standards. One time I was invited by the World Customs Organization in Bahamas to go and speak at a conference.
At a holiday.
It was a world customs.
Serious things happen in the Bahamas.
Yes, it was an international conference, and I was a major speaker. I arrived in Bahamas. The moment I landed, everybody who received me through the process of immigration, the taxi driver, the policeman,
the bellboy at the hotel.
He's marketing Bahamas. He's telling you how good this country is. Sorry for the long journey. How can we make you comfortable? These are the many things you can do. You arrive at the airport here. The taxi driver will start complaining
you
about
first
government.
meet a gunman.
At immigration.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Even before
in our
the
own industry,
immigration,
we
you
used to-
disembark and there is someone holding a gun.
Even in our own industry, we used to have problems of tour guides. There's a time I had clients who arrived and the tour guide picked them, and then he was from the airport. He was like, welcome to Kampala, but I don't know whether we shall arrive in Kampala or we go through a Panya, because I don't know whether there is tear gas today.
At least they didn't mention the pothole.
So you imagine, this is a tourist who has come, and the first thing you are doing is negativity. So it goes back to the trainings, the issue of standards and
But
training.
also those who are firing tear gas should also be serious.
Ssemujju is very happy.
Yes.
Those are Ssemujju's recruits.
So we have to look at
Drivers are, by the way.
as much as I think that there are issues of wages, issues of work conditions that need to be dealt with, we also need to look at our attitudes, standards, and training. There are certain areas where we should be very, like tourism. We need to have standards even for people who operate and pick tourists from the airport. They must have the policemen who are deployed counter-terrorism to guard these
They are
lodges.
so visible.
They are
They are
trained to
scary.
guard, but they are not given the orientation maybe on tourism.
Well, I was in Istanbul,
Yes.
and I went to a beach,
With you.
and I found police officers wearing shorts with their guns, yes, and riding on hoverboards. And they always moved in pairs.
Yes.
And they interacted with tourists, and they were more like of tour guides as opposed to the menacing police officers we see guiding at tourists in the district.
So it's all about orientation.
And the communication. You say you want to have tourists, you invite them, and then Enanga is announcing that we just arrested 10 ADF who are about to blow up. So you say,
Yesterday, last night I was reading. I was
I
looking.
hope my brother Enanga is listening as well.
No,
Always does.
I was reading on Twitter yesterday. 3 journalists. I will not mention their names. 3 journalists. All they tweeted, "COVID is back. COVID is back." I started saying, is there now conspiracy among the people to start developing a story?
Panic again.
A panic again. International World Health Organization has made a declaration. We are moving on, but all of a sudden, in a space of 2 hours, 3 journalists are posting COVID is back
With thousands of followers.
Yes. What are you trying to do? So we need to protect our economy. Workers need to be protected. There are issues in the Ministry of Labor, and I will say it here. There's a time we hosted a person here. No, that one was from the Labor Union. And I raised the issue of a person from Shema who was injured by machines on duty because of lack of protective gear and abandoned completely. But you have a labor ministry, you have a labor court, and then you have these issues of licensing. You license so many companies, but there is no follow-up. So we need to see how we can strengthen these labor issues. Sometimes I get bored with these speeches on Labor Day. You see someone giving strategy, talking too much theory, too much English, but practically
On the ground.
demonstrate, give out statistics in a year that our ministry, we have crossed this place because of labor issues. We have dealt with this case because of mistreatment. Then we can start believing you, but too much English and theory.
Thank you, Katesh. Now, in the week that we are
Characteristic.
at the beginning of this week, you're coming in. I was invited to give a talk at Victoria University, and it was around the issue of employability. And the underscore of my talk was that I don't believe there is unemployment in Uganda. What I believe is unemployability, because our attitudes
Maybe
towards
both.
work are not commensurate with where we want to be as a people. And the debate still goes on, and we can have that debate. But if I were to turn to you, Lydia, this gentleman, and I think Atesh specifically did speak about the issue of vocational training, that our education system seems to be training us to be employees of a certain nature, and we forget vocational work that for the most part, in fact, is also very paying. And I'll give an example of where I worked. There are two paths of growth in engineering. That you can start off as an engineer and grow through the ranks to become the managing director of Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited, for example. But then you can also join the same company and specialize to become an instrumentation engineer of the highest caliber. You don't go into administration, but you go into the practical skills. That you can go into a degree of tourism and leisure management, but you do not go into administration, you go in to become an acclaimed mixologist, or for that matter, as Katesh did give an example, a barista at coffee. Do we have a problem of looking at certain jobs as being inferior to the service we provide? Maybe we'll start from there, Lydia.
Now, I just wanted to give a quick experience from what OO said and what Honorable Katesh said. I was chairing the Committee of General Purpose in the East African Legislative Assembly, and that covers the budget. So when we are looking at the calendar of the EAC, we said no. We are going to rotate EAC meetings to the partner states so that you share exposure but also privileges and opportunities. So like the assembly should come and also sit in Uganda, etc. But the first time we were rotating the assembly sittings and the council of ministers, they hired a company to pick members of parliament and staff from the airport. But one experience, this driver that picked, they got coasters and they wrapped, before parliament got buses that can bring dignitaries and foreign affairs. So they put the banners, the flags of the EAC and Uganda. But that driver that picked delegates from the airport said, "Why have you come to Uganda? Will you manage the roads?" Because it was also the component of the tour of the country. So as you look at the program had the country tour, some areas say, "Hey, are you going to manage the roads? This road is so bad. This one, and some of you are so elderly." Because of course the East African community also, other countries really, Uganda is the youngest teams. In other countries like Rwanda, Kenya, they appoint former ministers, elderly. At your age, you think you really reach Mbali? The road is so bad. So by the time the people got into the hotel, they're saying, "Wait, your country is so bad. Why did you bring us here? Will you remove the component of country tour?" So I think that these guys, the Kateshis and whatever, they talk about value chain. We must have a value chain in Uganda. You cannot have drivers who only know that you sit on the wheel and drive over automatic vehicles. Somebody must be trained. What are you driving and what are you talking? Because a conversation from the airport up to Serena, or a conversation from the airport up to Mbali, so many of these elderly people or serious people, business Kenyans take to parliament, businessmen, they say, "I think I have better things," because when they come, they want to say that they have an business opportunity in Masaka. So if you are going to Ssemujju constituency, will you manage the jam? The jam there, the border boys are around there. Why have you come to Uganda? And they even, meanwhile, psychologically, he doesn't know that he has gotten a contract he will be paid, because if he's driving for the company, it means it's business for the company. There's a disconnect that he doesn't even see, that when he's driving people from the airport, that's his money to his company, and ultimately he will be paid, or he should be a beneficiary. So OO talked about private companies that are training labor for export, but we also have private companies that take people for driving schools, although you get the driving permit from a government agency, but it's about money. We need to have licensed and government touch with standards. I mean, what is the curriculum of you being a driver on the machine? You cannot even a mechanic. You can't even put a tire on that car when it has a problem. You don't know how to talk about, if you're a passenger driver, the conversation you have from Kampala to Mbale is so critical to national development and to opportunities like employment. So I think that we need to be very serious. Otherwise, we will not compete with countries like Kenya for sure, and also countries like Rwanda.
Just Lydia, you are talking about vocation.
Let's get closer to the microphone.
Yeah, just if you go today, just go and check government vocational and technical institutes. While government has put their resources, infrastructure, even machines and
mindset.
So on, you will be lucky to find a vocational institute
with more than 20%
occupancy. And yet, the secondary schools that are teaching history, Uganda, Islamic studies, the Padola, they are fully booked. They are fully, the Padola. It is called the Padola. They are fully booked. Why? Because we parents and guardians still insist we want our children to graduate in a university of nothing.
I give you an example.
So it is a crisis that we need to focus on. How do we retrain, reorient parents and guardians that vocational and technical education, whether